Hello, everybody. How lovely to see you. Although, of course, I can't see you, but I feel I can see you. That's the whole thing about this experience. And on the right hand side of my screen, I see everybody's comments from Missouri and Maine and the Netherlands and Dartmoor and southern Germany and Glastonbury and Yorkshire and drizzly London and Canada. Oh, that's lovely. Welcome, everybody. That's just great. That's fantastic to be with you. I start off feeling, I'll tell you, I start off feeling calm doing these things. And then just before we begin, I start to feel slightly anxious, and it's the anxiety has been cranked up because I'm using a different piece of technology, because I'm going to wheel in a guest in a minute, a friend who's going to slide in from one side of the screen to the other. And I've never done this before. So let's hope it works. I think it does. All this technology is such fun, really. Hello from Sintra in Portugal. Gosh, what a beautiful place that is. And Washington State and Guernsey and California and Switzerland. Lovely to see you all. Okay, so here we are, November 2022. How are you feeling? Just check in. Let's just take a few moments. Probably most of us have been busy all day, and this is our chance at the beginning of the week to have a little pause, to have a time where we can rest and sort of just be a little bit open, perhaps, to our sense of community, of each other, and of being together and meditating together. So just check in with yourself, and then just see if a word pops into your mind as to describe how you're feeling, and then pop it in the chat. Because the funny thing is that when you express it, sometimes it changes, sometimes it sort of kind of deepens the feeling, sometimes it exhausted but positive, thinking a chance to time out, grateful, tired and hopeful. Oh, it's going so fast. I finished the laundry. Hooray. Feeling delighted. It's going so fast. I feel better, contented, adrift, happy, blessed, but also overwhelmed. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel, I think. Cozy and a bit anxious and restless, sad, wintry, curious, fed up. Lots of difficult things happening all at once. Like an acorn waiting to grow. Cold. Feeling the darkness settling in. Open, says Jonathan. Inward, frustrated, says Anne. Pleasantly tired and a bit anxious. Okay, so we've got lovely to pause. It's been busy. Okay, so a whole lovely range of feelings. Well, one of the difficulties of living in this age is the amount of information that's around, the amount of ideas and stimulation. And many of us are interested in creativity, aren't we? There's the whole bardic stream in Druidry, which, one of the reasons I love Druidry is it because it encourages our creativity and gives us tools to invite the Arwen and the flow into our lives. And if you've managed to create anything, you'll probably have had that experience of finding it quite hard to get any attention because the world is such a noisy place. So you finish the book, you finish the painting, do whatever, the podcast, and who's listening, who's watching? Good friends will often be really wonderful, of course, but you want a wider audience. And it's hard. And so what I wanted to do today is we launched at Samhain, just after Samhain, we launched an initiative, the Order of Bards, Ovids and Druids, sponsoring a podcast, a series of 6 episodes, really fantastic podcast, put together by the wonderful David Bramwell. And I've managed to miniaturize him. I came across an old ancient manuscript and I made a potion and I took it round to his house, and with the collusion of his partner, Anne, we slipped it into a drink he had this evening as he was having his supper. And let me show you the result. There he is. In fact, he's actually smaller than that. He's that size. David, welcome.
Thank you for having me on, Philip. And I feel particularly privileged. This is the first time you've done this.
Yeah. Yes, it's the first time I've miniaturized.
Yes,
and you can see I've drunk the potion as well. So I'm not being particularly unfair to you because I've had some of this potion too. And we're both miniaturized like that. And what I can do is I can press another button and we just get a little bit closer. And so it's lovely to see you. And you're just down the road in Brighton.
I am. I'm in the driveway.
Yes, and I came across David when we got an invitation to the Lewis Catalyst Club, and we didn't know what it was exactly, but we went along to a pub, the Lewis Arms, and there was this wonderful event that David put on, different speakers speaking about their own passions and so on, with little gaps in between for a drink, and it was just a lovely way to spend an evening, and got to know David. And they invited him to Glastonbury, where he gave the most fantastic performance of his show, which was called
The Cult of Water.
The Cult of Water, that's right, which got a standing ovation. It was just fantastic. And so, David, you've recently finished creating a series of 6 podcasts that are going up, one a week over the next over 6 weeks, and 3 of them have come out already. The 3rd episode came out today. Why on earth, in a busy world where everybody is filled with information overload, why on earth should anyone bother to listen to Adventures in Nutopia?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. I would hope that one of the reasons why they might listen to it is that it's not your typical podcast series. It's not just a conversation with the guest. The podcast episodes they're documentaries with lots of different voices, lots of different experiences. I would hope that my experiences working for BBC, making programs for Radio 3 and 4, have brought a high quality control to those episodes as well. So people tell me that they like the podcast series for that. And it's driven by ideas, it's driven by passion, and it's driven by optimism. And the listeners, viewers do not need me to point out all the problems that are going wrong in the world right now. But what we do need are solutions that are inclusive and communal and sustainable and ecological and re-enchanting. And I hope that this series in its own small way offers some hope and new ways of looking at the world and gives some optimism to those who tune in, as well as some humor. It's not done in a po-faced way. It's done with humor and a bit of mischief. We've got some adverts for Obod in there, which you gave to me, and I turned them into comedy adverts. But the response has been really nice. People have been emailing and tweeting and texting and saying how much they like the adverts. So for the adverts alone, people are enjoying it.
People should listen to it just for the adverts alone.
But there's some really big topics. The first, I'd encourage those who are watching who are interested to start at the beginning, because it is a series, and the first episode is called New Myths to Live By, and we could have called the series New Myths to Live By because that is really the driving force of the podcast. And so this first episode, it explores some big ideas. It explores the myths that drove Western culture to where we are on the edge of a precipice, and looks at where the narratives and the metaphors of selfishness and greed and isolation and competition and combative metaphors, where they came from, and how we can steer ourselves away from those into new ways of looking at the world and new ways of living that are more ecological, more sustainable. And these aren't my ideas. These are thinkers from the past, people like Alan Watts, I draw on, and contemporary thinkers like Sharon Blackie, the mythologist, George Monbiot, the activist and journalist, Jeremy Lent, who's a huge inspiration, who's an English philosopher but living in California and leading a movement called Ecological Civilization. And a non-binary artist called Brooke Palmieri, because it felt important that we looked at how the narratives around gender, gender politics are changing. So it's, it tries to cover a lot. And I got to put in my hero Alan Watts. I'm a big, Alan Watts has really inspired me because I think he's such a beautiful and brilliant philosopher who, having listened to hundreds of hours of his talks, I don't think I've ever heard him judge or say anything derogatory or cynical about people or the world or different ideas. He was a very inclusive thinker, like Joseph Campbell's another one who, Carl Jung, very inspiring people. And one of the real joys of making this series was getting to meet people who have hugely inspired me. The farmer Abby Rose, who runs Farmerama podcast, I found her massively inspiring in the episode that went out today. Sharon Blackie, her insights into mythology, past and present, were hugely inspiring. And so it's been an absolute joy to make a podcast series around these themes.
Well, and what's lovely about, as you say, these many voices, there's very much a sense that the podcast series is we, not me. It's not just one person, or as you say, two people, as in many podcasts, but it's this whole lot of voices speaking, each one unique, but also somehow in tune, and that gives a really heartwarming feeling to the whole series. I experienced the whole series as warm, as very human, and as you say, optimistic. I mean, boy, do we need optimism in these days, Yeah. And but an optimism that is, if you might say, practical optimism. It's not just feel good new age stuff. It's practical optimism with sort of pointing ways forward, pointing direction.
Yeah, and one of the people who's inspired, one of the people I'd love to have had in the series, but an absolute bugger to track him down because he's too busy, is the Dutch philosopher Rutger Bregman, who wrote Utopia for Realists, and he, I don't know if he coined this phrase, but in one of his books he uses the phrase underdog socialism, and it's almost, I feel like he's almost kind of like using this phrase for a certain British or maybe European mindset, which is those of us with maybe more left-wing leanings and more socialist collective leanings have this sense of, oh, the world is going to hell and what's the point, and let's just go down the pub and moan about it. And that's that's sort of his definition of underdog socialism, and that doesn't help anybody. It's a very lazy way of thinking. There's a poet who I'd love to include in the next series, Selena Godden, who did a collection of poems called "Pessimism is for Lightweights," and that's such a great phrase.
Yeah.
It's a challenge, isn't it? She's challenging us to change our mindsets if we are of that inclination to tend towards the glass half empty. So, but I like what you say about the way that the guests kind of join together. So the episode which hasn't gone out yet, which I think might be the next one, which is looking at the one after next, looking at pilgrimage. I got to interview Guy, I've forgotten his surname, Guy Hayward, who set up the British Pilgrim Trust, and talked to him about traditional pilgrim routes, and Rupert Sheldrake, who looks at sort of the science around and spirituality around pilgrimages and why they're important. But then the driving narrative throughout that episode is Daisy Campbell, who created her own very original pilgrimage, where she took 69 creative individuals from CERN Giant in Dorset in England to CERN the Experiment, the center of CERN in Switzerland, on a pilgrimage to immanentize the eschaton. And I didn't know what that meant until I interviewed Daisy. And Daisy talks, I think, very lucidly and eloquently at the end about the processes she went through in creating her own unique pilgrimage and why it was important to her. So for an episode like that, I really liked drawing on tradition and drawing on a progressive and original take on that subject. So I'm always looking for narratives with these stories. And again, I think this is what I learned from working with the BBC. So I hope that they are compelling stories and ideas, each and every one of them.
Well, they perform the function of being very full and rich, but leaving you wanting more, which is, which is
Perfect.
really good.
Yeah.
And the other thing, and here's something that it's just occurred to me. I can't remember, because the music in the podcast is so integral to it. It feels like there was music all the time in the background. Is that true, or does it sort of fade in and out?
It fades in and out. So
Yeah,
I'm a musician, and I love interweaving music with audio, whether it's podcasts or kind of BBC stuff, and yeah. So that's something that I like doing, and it can be, if you use it carefully. I think the music can be misused, particularly in documentaries, where people use driving strings, to get you to get all the motive about something. But the music's quite soporific, and it's quite gentle, generally speaking. And so it's there to create a slightly dreamy atmosphere when needed, or just to give a little lift to the guests, and to kind of link things together, and to make it more of a journey, I suppose. I can't help myself.
Absolutely, no, it's lovely. It really stands out. You're weaving music and words together. So it's a sort of bardic gift, really, that you've given us, David, which is really lovely. And we're so enamored of it. You're doing another series for us, which is so you're off to all sorts of festivals. You were at a festival last week called the Weird Festival. Is that right?
It was called Making the Weird Norm. No, what's it called?
The Weird Normal.
Something like that, Making the Weird Norm. And it was people exploring in kind of fringe ideas around consciousness. I say fringe ideas as in the orthodoxy of science. So these are people who very much believe that that the experiments that have been done over the last 30, 40 years into what you might call a field of consciousness, that there's enough evidence there to demonstrate that there is a field of consciousness, and that we can make a difference through things like healing, remote healing, faith healing, through prayer, through meditation, through magic, through intention. And it was fascinating to be there, surrounded by scientists and healers and artists from around the world, take part in exercises and activities that I'd always wanted to do. So I got to try remote viewing, and I got to play with these bits of equipment that generate random numbers. And because they spew out so many, ones and zeros, they're called random number generators, RNGs, and they spew out so many ones and zeros per second that the computer will flatline with a 50-50 number of ones and zeros. And then you could sit there and then apply your intention to these generators and see if you can change the number of ones and zeros that are spewed out. And I found that I had a very strong response to this equipment, and it left me, I remain agnostic about this, I suppose, but something happened, unless the guy was sitting there fiddling under the table and changing the data. And so yeah, it's quite nice to do a subject, and obviously I'm still working through this, in which I don't really know how I feel fully about it, how much I believe, and I'm looking forward to the way the series is unfolding, and teaching.
Well, that's the other thing I think is so important, is the concept of closure versus openness in creativity.
Yeah.
That sort of the trick, as it were, or the art in creativity. One of the ways of looking at it is remaining open and flexible enough to receive inspiration, to get new ideas, to be open to having your perspective challenged by others, and so on. And then being able to go in and to produce something as a result of that. If you stay open, or you open too widely, then it's really hard to be creative, because you can't produce anything, because there's just endless input. So there's this. It's a bit like breathing or something like that. But in a way, the way I experience the podcast as well is it's like a kind of pilgrimage, which is kind of agnostic. You're there as the narrator, or the I don't know what you call it, but the podcaster or whatever, and you're kind of open to these ideas, and you're listening to people and asking questions, and you're taking us along on this ride. But there's always the mystery, and that's the distinction. I think one of the distinctions between, say, science and spirituality or the mysteries is that, this is an exaggeration, but I'm going to say this. is that science is like really wants to know the answer and is trying to bash down the door to grab hold of the truth by the scruff of the neck and articulate it. Whereas with a sort of spiritual approach is much more one of honoring the mystery, of recognizing the limitations of the human mind, being open to more and to understanding and clarity, but sort of respecting the inner sanctum. Do you think that's high blown and I don't know, or do you think, does it make sense to you?
Yeah, it totally makes sense to me. I just noticed in the comments someone's asked, we haven't said what the podcast is called yet.
Yeah, it's called, yes, it's called. I'll type it in: Adventures in Nutopia. And I've given the link, and I'll give it to you again. And I'm trying to think of a way now of how we avoid this broadcast becoming one long plug for this wonderful thing.
Well, to continue on what you were saying there, the second episode explores the idea of reality tunnels, and this was a concept that was a phrase that was coined by Timothy Leary, who I'm sure everybody will know, but actually was really explored and celebrated in a more kind of fun and inclusive way by the counterculture philosopher Robert Anton Wilson. And so the episodes are all presented in a different way. So the first one, there's a lot of talking heads and a lot of old recordings and new recordings that are put in there. By episode 3, we're at we're at an agroecology festival, a farming festival. So most of that episode is live. But episode 2 is a roundtable discussion between 3 thinkers: Daisy Campbell, who's an artist and performer; John Higgs, who's a brilliant author; and Michelle Ollie, who's also a writer and performer, and all of them experts on this idea of reality tunnels. And very, in a nutshell, the concept is that we all construct the reality that works for us, and we get lost in it. We forget that it's a tunnel. We forget. We think that our way is the right way and everybody else is wrong. And we live in such a divisive culture right now in the West, but particularly with politics, where you either sit on one side or the other, and find it very hard to see it from somebody else's point of view. And Robert Anton Wilson was one of these brilliant individuals who said, you've got to break free of your reality tunnel. I'll set you some experiments. You're not going to like them, but here's experiment number 1. For a month, subscribe to all of the magazines, podcasts, blogs, papers, etc., that are for the political persuasion that you're not into. Like if you're a left winger, then only subscribe to the right for an entire month and try and see things from their point of view, or vice versa. And we think, oh, I don't want to do that.
It's really hard. I did that during the Trump era. I tried to make myself watch Fox News. I only managed about two sittings, but I was trying to do that. Yeah,
because it's important to know how other people think and approach things. Because and it's so I really enjoyed exploring that topic, and the three people within that episode. The word agnostic came out again and again and again. That's if you're a scientist. The only proper scientific way to approach the world is to be agnostic. If you're atheist, then that's not really very scientific. I like that. I like those kind of challenges. And I do have my own, I try and keep my own sort of beliefs a little bit under wraps within the series. So as you say, kind of present myself as someone who's kind of like meandering through these topics, because I think I've got a friend, Alistair, who you mentioned the Catalyst Club at the beginning. Alistair, he hasn't been for a little while because he's not been very well, but Alistair is always the first person in the queue for the Catalyst Club. He has this wonderful kind of foppish moustache, dresses very eccentrically, and he always sits at the front. And Alistair would not mind me saying that he is a hardcore kind of Dawkins rationalist, reductionist scientist. And if anybody gets up to give a talk that he might consider woo, when he uses the word woo, he sits there with his arms folded and his eyebrows furrowed, and he harumphs all the way through. And whenever I'm writing, or whether I'm making a podcast, I've always got Alistair there on my shoulder, and I'm thinking, how would Alistair respond to this? Is it open enough that even somebody like him who I find his ideas very challenging. Would this be open enough that Alistair would begrudgingly unfold his arms and go, well, I'm quite enjoying this. It doesn't necessarily fit with my worldview, but you know, he's presenting it in an inclusive way. So Alistair is my little angel or demon. I'm not sure which, that kind of sits on my shoulder. Maybe you're on the other shoulder as well, Philip. The two of you there.
Fantastic. Yes. When David comes round to visit us, hours and hours later, it's 1 a.m. we've been talking forever, and you're such a great. I'm just wondering, is there a way in which we can meditate together, David, with everybody else in this space? You see, what interests you? You were talking about this festival of consciousness. You know, the extraordinary thing is that, you know, we know each other in the 3D world, and then here we are. We've got these sort of simulacra, as it were, shrunk down here in 2D, and there's this connection between us. And then we've got 247 people at the moment, which in the recordings will go up to, through all the various channels, sometimes up to 4,000, maybe 2,000 views and all the rest of it. But right now, there are 249 people with us. And some theories of consciousness that hard-nosed scientists would reject say that we're all in the same field. We're kind of tuned in. Hard to explain from a scientific point of view, but I believe it. Well, I don't even believe it. I don't think I need to believe it. I just choose to entertain the notion and to go with it. And it makes me feel good to feel I'm connected, that it's not just you and me gabbling on and 250 people now watching us, but that somehow we're all in this together. And there's something incredibly kind of nourishing and supportive around that. So maybe let's just try. I'm going to thank you enormously. I'm going to wield the power that I have to keep you there, but to mute you so that you can feel free to, you know, make noises and all the rest of it. But stay there and let's meditate together with everybody else. Should we do that?
That sounds nice. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I don't know whether you as a guest see the comments coming up.
I can. Yeah. Although I've been a bit focused on
Yeah, absolutely. When we finish, I'll keep it on the dashboard. I'll finish the broadcast, but you can scroll back and read people's comments, because people are saying all sorts of fascinating and lovely things and interesting stuff. And a lot of people have heard the podcast already. So I'll do that. I'll let you scroll it. But in the meanwhile, I'm going to mute you. Okay. And so let's all do a little meditation, because we've been talking for half an hour. So it'll be a very brief meditation, but let's just become, if you're up for it, if you want to, just feel free to either keep looking with your eyes open or to gently lower your gaze or close your eyes, whatever feels comfortable for you. But just to hold within your awareness both a sense of being seated in front of your screen, in the reality that you find yourself at home or wherever you are, but at the same time to open to this extraordinary realm of consciousness that is more than that. This one reality you're in is discrete and unique and particular to you. But there's another level of reality which we're all sharing. And as you allow yourself perhaps to open to that, maybe one way to do it is to not think about it too much, but just to be aware of your body, your physical body, and your experience of space. Just asking yourself how it feels for your consciousness to be located in your body, and how within that you can perhaps locate a feeling of spaciousness, or maybe just ask yourself, what's my experience of space as I tune into my consciousness and my body? And perhaps we can allow ourselves just to become aware of being in a sacred grove, not even having to travel to it, but it just gently manifesting around us, so that we're with a wonderful group of people in a clearing in the forest. The earth beneath us, the trees around us, and the sky above us. Let's become aware of the trees now, our brothers and sisters, the trees, rooted deep in the earth. We can sense their roots going deep into the earth, creating a sense of stability, of protection. You breathe in deeply, hold for a moment, and then breathe out fully and deeply, just allowing yourself to become aware of the earth beneath you. You can feel the stabilizing, energizing energy of the earth, just grounding you and bringing you a sense of stability and calm. And become aware of the sky above you now. And as you breathe in the clarity and the energy of the sky, so that the energy of the sky meets the energy of the earth within the center of your being. And centered in your awareness now, if you wish, and to the degree that you want to, just see if you can open your awareness to a sense of being in the group. And it doesn't have to have words attached to it. It can just be some kind of sensation or awareness that none of us is alone, that we're connected, that there are people of like mind and heart all over the world who are together in consciousness at this moment. You might perhaps see a wonderful circle of people seated on the ground with a little fire burning in the center of our grove. And you might like to imagine that you're stretching your hands out to either side of you, and you take hold of a hand to either side of you so you can sense this circle. We are heart to heart and hand in hand, connected together, sending our blessings to each other, to the earth beneath us. May the earth be preserved and protected. May nature be helped to restore itself. May peace prevail on earth. May our lives be blessed. May all life be blessed. May the land be blessed. And then gradually become aware of your sense of the group. Gently let go of the hands to either side of you, perhaps bringing your hand to your heart, your hands to your heart. And then feeling yourself as a particular, unique soul in the world at this time. Gradually allow your awareness of the circle to fade, of your companions to fade, as you become aware of being seated in front of your screen, fully present here and now. And then gently, when you're ready, you open your eyes. So thank you all for being here. Thank you all for listening to David and I, and for sharing your comments, which you can still do even after it finishes. Oh, David Jones had a lovely comment, which I'm going to highlight. Envisioning the circle of the grove with a campfire in the middle, it transformed into a galaxy, billions of stars, all connected in love. That's so nice. So thank you, everyone. Have a lovely week. Do listen to Adventures in Nutopia if you get a chance. I'll pop the link in again. And thank you so much for David. You're unmuted now, David.
Okay. Thank you, Philip.
So great to see you. And
can I express my gratitude as well for OBOD for supporting this podcast series as well. So, you know, to be given the opportunity to make a podcast, the podcast series that I always wanted to make, I have incredible gratitude. So thank you.
I'm so glad we decided to do that, David, and I'm so glad that I put the link up just now, and I'm so glad that that you're working on the other series. It's fantastic. So okay, well, lots of love to everybody, and have a great week, and see you next week.
Great.
Bye then.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.